Think about the last three big problems in your life: a relationship that fell apart, a job that didn't work out, a friendship that ended badly, a pattern of self-sabotage you cannot seem to break. Now ask yourself honestly, have any of these happened before? Not the exact situation, but the same feeling, the same ending, the same moment where everything collapsed in exactly the same way. If the answer is yes, you are not unlucky. You are unconscious. Carl Jung spent his entire career studying why intelligent, self-aware people keep repeating the same painful patterns. And his answer was not what most people expect. The problem is not your circumstances. It is not other people. It is not bad luck. The problem is that something inside you, something you cannot see, keeps recreating the same situations until you finally face what it is trying to show you. Jung called the path out of this loop individuation, and it is the most important concept in all of his work. Individuation is Jung's word for the lifelong process of becoming who you actually are, not who your parents wanted you to be, not who your culture shaped you to be, not the persona you perform for the world, but the full, complete, authentic version of yourself, with every part of your psyche integrated and conscious. Jung wrote in 2 essays on analytical psychology that the aim of individuation is nothing less than to divest the self of the false wrappings of the persona on one hand and the suggestive power of the unconscious on the other. In other words, to strip away the mask and face what is underneath it. This is not a weekend workshop. It is not a meditation retreat. It is not a self-help program you complete in 30 days. Jung was clear. Individuation is the work of a lifetime. It has no final destination. Every step of genuine self-knowledge leads to a deeper layer waiting to be explored. But here is why it matters for repeating patterns specifically. Jung believed that the unconscious is not passive. It is not simply a storage room for forgotten memories. It is an active, living system. And when it contains material that has never been made conscious, it will express that material through your life, through your choices, through your relationships, through the situations you keep finding yourself in. The unconscious speaks through repetition. Every pattern you keep repeating is the unconscious sending you the same message until you are finally ready to hear it. To understand why patterns repeat, you need to understand one of Jung's most important concepts, the complex. A complex is a cluster of emotionally charged material in the unconscious. It forms around a core emotional wound, usually from early experience, and it operates like an autonomous personality inside you. Jung wrote in The Structure and Dynamics of the Psyche that complexes behave like independent beings, with their own intentions, their own emotional logic, and their own ways of taking over conscious behavior when triggered. Think of it like this. A child who grows up in a home where love was conditional, where affection was withdrawn whenever they failed to perform, develops a complex around worthiness. A core unconscious belief: I am only loved when I succeed. I must earn my place. This complex does not disappear when the child grows up. It goes underground, into the unconscious, where it waits. And then, every time that person enters a relationship, a job, a friendship, the complex activates. It filters their perception. It drives their choices. It recreates the original dynamic. They find partners who are emotionally withholding. They take jobs with impossible standards. They exhaust themselves performing for people who will never be satisfied, not because they are stupid, not because they are weak, because the complex is running the show, and they cannot see it because it is unconscious. This is why you keep repeating the same patterns. It is not bad luck. It is an unconscious complex looking for resolution and finding the same situation again and again, because the same unhealed wound keeps attracting the same dynamic. Here is exactly how the loop operates. And I want you to see if you recognize this in your own life. Step 1. The wound forms. In early life, something happens that creates a core emotional wound. Abandonment, rejection, shame, the belief that you are not enough, that you cannot trust people, that love is dangerous. Step 2. The wound goes unconscious because you cannot process it as a child. It gets buried. You build defenses around it, a persona that protects you from ever feeling it again. You become the strong one, the independent one, the one who doesn't need anyone, the one who always performs perfectly. Step 3. The complex attracts its mirror. Here is the strange part. The unconscious wound does not seek to avoid pain. It seeks resolution. And because it only knows one template, the original wound, it recreates it. The person who was abandoned as a child unconsciously selects partners who will eventually leave. The person who was shamed selects situations where they will be criticized, not because they want pain, because the unconscious is trying to replay the original scene, hoping this time it will end differently. Step 4. The pattern collapses. The relationship ends. The job falls apart. The friendship breaks. And the person is devastated and completely confused. They do not understand why this keeps happening. Step 5. Nothing changes because the wound is still unconscious, so the whole loop begins again. Jung called this the compulsion to repeat. And he believed it continues, without mercy, without variation, until the original wound is finally brought to consciousness and integrated. Jung had a fascinating theory about midlife. He believed that the first half of life is necessarily about building the persona, establishing yourself in the world, finding a career, a partner, a social identity, a set of roles that function. But he also believed that at some point, usually between 35 and 50, the unconscious can no longer be ignored. The material that was buried begins to push upward with tremendous force. This is what most people call a midlife crisis. The successful executive who suddenly abandons everything. The devoted mother who feels completely hollow inside. The person who has done everything right and feels nothing. Jung did not see this as a crisis. He saw it as an invitation. In Modern Man in Search of a Soul, he wrote that the afternoon of life must have a significance of its own and cannot be merely a pale imitation of the morning. The midlife crisis is the unconscious demanding individuation. It is the unlived life, the buried parts, the abandoned dreams, the unintegrated shadow, rising up and refusing to be ignored any longer. The people who treat it as a crisis to be managed, who suppress it, who distract themselves, who double down on the persona, miss the invitation entirely. The loop continues. The patterns intensify. The people who turn toward it, and who ask what is trying to emerge, begin the genuine work of individuation. Jung described individuation as moving through 4 psychological territories, each one representing a deeper layer of the unconscious being brought to light. The first stage is confronting the persona, recognizing that the mask you wear is not you, that the role you perform, the professional, the parent, the good person, the successful one, is a construction. Useful, but not your full self. Individuation begins the moment you stop identifying completely with your mask. The second stage is confronting the shadow. This is the work we explored in the first 2 videos in this series, facing everything you have rejected about yourself. Owning your anger, your jealousy, your selfishness, your darkness. Withdrawing your projections. Taking back what you placed onto other people. The third stage is confronting the anima, or animus. As we discussed in the last video, the unconscious opposite within you. For a man, the hidden feminine. For a woman, the hidden masculine. Withdrawing romantic projections. Developing a relationship with your own inner depths, rather than constantly seeking them in other people. The fourth and final stage is encountering the self, not the ego, the small self that manages daily life. The self with a capital S, Jung's term for the totality of the psyche. The deepest center, the archetype of wholeness. The part of you that knows who you are beneath every mask, every wound, every role. Jung believed this encounter between the ego and the self was the goal of human psychological development. The closest thing to what spiritual traditions call enlightenment, expressed in psychological terms. So how do you actually break the pattern? Jung's answer is not comfortable, but it is honest. You break the pattern by making the unconscious conscious. There is no shortcut. There is no technique that bypasses the actual work of self-knowledge. But here is where to start. Step 1. Map your patterns. Write down every significant repeating pattern in your life. Relationships that ended the same way. Jobs that collapsed at the same point. Friendships that followed the same arc. Look for the common thread, not in the other people, but in your own role. What did you do? What did you feel? What did you need that you never asked for? Step 2. Find the original wound. For each pattern, ask, when did I first feel this? Not in the recent version, but the earliest version. The first time you felt abandoned. The first time you felt ashamed. The first time you felt you were not enough. That original scene is where the complex formed. That is where the work begins. Step 3. Stop blaming circumstances. Every time you explain a repeating pattern entirely through external factors, bad luck, bad people, impossible situations, you are protecting the complex from being seen. Jung was direct. What you cannot see in yourself, you will keep experiencing in your life. The pattern is the message. Step 4. Sit with the discomfort. Individuation is not pleasant. Confronting the shadow, withdrawing projections, examining wounds. All of this requires tolerating enormous psychological discomfort. Jung wrote that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. The loop only breaks when you stop running from the pain and turn to face what it is pointing at. Step 5. Work with dreams. Jung believed that dreams are the primary language of the unconscious. They do not conceal, they reveal. Start keeping a dream journal. The recurring images, the recurring figures, the recurring scenarios in your dreams are often direct communications from the unconscious about what needs to be integrated. Jung said something I want to leave you with. He said that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, not to improve yourself, not to optimize yourself, not to become the best version of yourself, a phrase that has lost all meaning. To accept yourself completely, the darkness and the light, the mask and what is behind it, the wounds and the gold that lives inside them. That is individuation. It is not a destination. It is a direction, a commitment to keep moving toward consciousness, no matter how uncomfortable, no matter how many times the pattern reasserts itself, no matter how long the work takes. The loop breaks not when life gets easier, but when you finally see clearly enough to stop recreating what you have not yet faced. In the next video, we go to the deepest level, Jung's concept of the self, the archetype of wholeness, the center of everything we have been building toward across this entire series. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And drop a comment below. What is the one pattern in your life you keep repeating? You don't have to share all of it. Just name it. Sometimes naming it is the first step out of the loop.